We are now coming up on a decade and a half since the launch of Skyrim, and although that is an amazing game that has brought me in particular many years of fun, until this day I still play that game a lot, the question on everybody's mind for years now has been, when are we getting The Elder Scrolls 6? So on today's video I'm going to be trying to answer that question as best as I can, because obviously I don't have a crystal ball. I'm not Todd. I don't know when the game is going to come out exactly. I don't think Todd even knows when the game is going to come out. Now, what we do have is an approximate date and a lot of information that has leaked and information that has been straight up given to us in reports and interviews that Todd has conducted since 2018. So what I'm going to be doing in this video is I'm going to be dividing it in two halves. On the first half, I'm going to be catching you up on everything that we know for a fact so far. Every single interview, every public statement that Bethesda or Todd has made, and even leaked court documents that we know that Bethesda had to submit. So we're not talking about some random person online or somebody that claims to be an insider. These are court documents that have revealed some of what we know about the timing of the game, when it was supposed to launch, when it's expected to launch, and what we kind of know so far. On the second half of the video, now that everybody's caught up and brought up to speed, we're going to be discussing the most recent news and leaks that we have as well. Because yes, as of recent, we got some pretty spicy leaks. And these cover a pretty wide range of topics, everything from where's the game going to be taking place, to gameplay changes and new features that they're going to be introducing, the new skills or perk mechanic for the game. Things like the leveling system, talking about how dragons are going to be making a return to the game, talking about marine combat and naval combat, underwater exploration, all kinds of things, and even how many cities are supposedly going to be in the game. So we're going to be talking about all of that in today's video, and everything that I say, I'll make sure to provide you the source. So we're going to start this video by going all the way back to an interview that Todd gave back in 2018. So when it comes specifically to interviews, because we're going to be discussing also documents and things like that, but when it specifically comes to interviews, we're going to be focusing on the ones that I found to be the most relevant. And I'm not going to be playing these interviews here because, for one, I'm not trying to get a copyright strike on my channel, and two, for the sake of time, because they're very long. So this right here was one of the first interviews that I could find where Todd is discussing The Elder Scrolls 6, and we get a little bit of an insight on where his head is at or what his thoughts are. So in this interview, he goes ahead and asks Todd what everybody wants to know. When is The Elder Scrolls 6 coming out? And Todd kind of explains that the game is currently at that point in pre-production, quote unquote. I think it's important to go a little bit deeper into this because Todd explains in his own words what pre-production means and how Bethesda operates. And it's important to explain that because a lot of people seem to think that The Elder Scrolls 6 is a game that has been in the making for 14-15 years. And I hate to say it, that's just obviously not the case. Pre-production means that a few concepts are being made. There's a handful of people kind of working on it. It doesn't mean they're actually making the game. So aside from Fallout 76, Todd goes ahead and explains that their Montreal division is working on some random mobile game that I've never heard of, but I guess it's called Blades. Anyway, something nobody really cares about, but they're kind of working on that too. So at this point, the interviewer kind of presses Todd a little bit about this. He goes ahead and asks him like, hey Todd, don't you think that that's a bad thing? It seems that, historically, Bethesda tends to focus on one thing at a time, and now, the manpower is divided. The scope is too big. Isn't that a bad thing? We're losing focus. Isn't that kind of diluting the workforce and the effort in general? To which Todd responds that that's basically how Bethesda has always operated. They always overlap projects a little bit. So this is nothing new. Don't worry type of thing. This is how we always do stuff. They then get into the subject of Starfield, which is the next big project that they're going to be working on, and he explains that The Elder Scrolls 6 is in that pre-production phase. And in his own words, what that means is that the fans need to be patient because the pre-production phase is nothing more than a conceptual phase. There's no gameplay being worked on. The game is not really being designed yet. He explains that at Bethesda, nothing goes into full production at the same time as something else. There are no two games truly being worked on at the same time, really. It's not like a third of the team is working on Fallout, then the other third is working on The Elder Scrolls 6, and then the other third is working on Starfield. He explains that it doesn't work like that. All these games are in pre-production phase until they move into all the team is working on it type of thing. So at this point, all the team is working on Fallout, and then all the team is working on Starfield. So they're not really even working on The Elder Scrolls 6 at this point, really. So about a year goes by since this interview, and it's now 2019, and Todd is again being interviewed by the same person. The interviewer, what a hero, goes ahead and presses Todd once again about The Elder Scrolls 6, and I say he's a hero because it's clearly bothering Todd. It's clearly making him annoyed. And basically the gist of it is he says, hey Todd, do you really think that it's a good idea to leave this series dormant for this long? Is it really a good idea to make fans wait so long? To which Todd kind of deflects a little bit. He goes and says, well, we're not leaving the series dormant. It's not dead. Look at The Elder Scrolls Online. He keeps bringing up The Elder Scrolls Online as the reason why, the series is not dead. It's very much alive. And then very rightfully so, the interviewer goes ahead and says, well, but you know what I'm talking about. Most of your fans don't want to play The Elder Scrolls Online. They want a single player game. To which Todd, basically, you can tell he's annoyed, just cuts him off and go, I know. That's basically the answer. And he proceeds to basically say that it's good to miss things. It's a good thing that it's been a while because people remember Skyrim very fondly. So when they come into the new game, there's all this nostalgia build up. There's this hype. So he thinks that that's a good thing. The other thing he mentions is that the technology is not quite there yet. It's not quite where he would like to be in order to make this game. Let me just say really quick that with this video, I'm not trying to put down or defend Todd or Bethesda. I'm just trying to give you the information and I'll give you my opinion. If you don't know this, the cool thing right now on the internet is to hate on Bethesda and take a shot at Todd at every opportunity. So I'm just going to go ahead and let you know that I'm not going to be doing that today. I'm an adult, I have a job, these things I care about them, but they're not that important. I don't hate anybody, I don't hate Todd, alright? Am I a little bit disappointed that it's been so long since the last game? Do I feel like they've made some bad decisions along the way that are delaying this project more than it needs to be? Absolutely, I agree with that. But I also don't hate Bethesda, and I don't think that everything that Todd says is wrong, and I love their games. So, there's things I agree with, there's obviously things that I don't, but I don't hate them. Are the children out of the room? Can we talk about things in earnest now? Can I just say how I actually feel? Great, let's go ahead and move on. So is it good to miss things like Todd says? In principle, as an idea, absolutely. I completely agree with him as far as that goes. I don't want the Elder Scrolls franchise to become Call of Duty or FIFA. I don't want this franchise to become the next Assassin's Creed, where every single year there has to be a new Assassin's Creed game, or every 2 years they just push it out. I don't want that. And not only that, because one of the biggest criticisms that Bethesda games have been getting over the years is that they look too much the same, like they look outdated. The engine that they're using is not up to par. The games don't look as nice as they should. I don't think it would be a good thing for the franchise for a decade or a decade and a half later for the game to just look mildly better than the previous one. It needs to be a huge step up at this point. Like it or not, the bar has been set so high by Skyrim that I feel like no matter what Bethesda delivers, and I'm sure they feel the same way, that no matter what they do, it's never going to be good enough. I don't blame them for wanting to take their time. Now, on the other hand of the argument, this interview was happening back in 2018 and 2019, so it's been like 6 years since this conversation. So I do agree to a large extent with the interviewer that, isn't that a bad thing, that we're diluting the workforce and working on too many things at once? Yeah, probably right. I think we really saw that with Starfield, and although I like Starfield, you can clearly tell that there's not as much ongoing support. The DLC, it's just not there. They supposedly have this entire roadmap for Starfield, and I haven't seen a whole lot of anything being done. Yes, they did patch up the game a little bit. They did introduce very, mediocre survival mechanics into the game. They did introduce some damage sliders to help with the sponginess of the enemies. And they did release what I consider a pretty mediocre DLC, especially for the price. I love Starfield, but it's very clear to me that the game is not getting the level of ongoing support that it should be because we're doing too many things at once. That's very obvious. At this point, as Todd himself has confirmed, it's all hands on deck for The Elder Scrolls 6. I guess my only hope is that this pressure from the fans and from everybody around them saying that it's been too long or whatever doesn't cause them to just push the game out and it's not that good. I don't mind waiting a little bit more. At this point, I don't care that it's been 15 years. Take another 5 years if you need to, whatever. As long as the game comes out perfect, that's what matters. I don't want them to just shove it out the door. Anyway, let's get back to the interviews and what information we have so far. So then comes 2020, and as most of you know, Bethesda gets acquired by Microsoft. So then comes 2021, and Todd gives yet again another interview. So pretty much a very similar conversation happens here once again. Todd gets pressed about The Elder Scrolls 6. Is it a good thing that it's taking this long? When is the game coming out? Can you share anything with us? He basically finally admits that, he wishes he could make it go faster, but he can't, and that yes, it has been too long, he agrees, but that the franchise is still very much alive, that Oblivion and Skyrim are still very popular, and so is The Elder Scrolls Online. Now this is where I think a lot of people start really getting annoyed with Todd, because he essentially admits, not directly, but he basically says that the reason we haven't gotten The Elder Scrolls 6 yet is because it's still very popular. Essentially what he's saying is that the franchise is still making a lot of money, so there's no need to make a new game. They would rather take advantage of this opportunity and kind of use it to be able to work on other stuff. And so he then says that they've had this idea for a long time. Starfield has been in the back burner and the desire to make it has been there for a while now. And it just never felt like the right time to do it. And so with the popularity of Skyrim and their other existing projects like The Elder Scrolls Online, because all that is going very well, it's now or never type of thing. They saw a window, a good opportunity to finally make the thing. So part of me can sympathize with that because, like I said, we don't want this to become Call of Duty or Assassin's Creed. If all they're ever doing is Fallout Skyrim, Fallout Skyrim, Fallout Skyrim, eventually, supposedly, it would get boring. So I understand the desire to make new stuff, to give it a break, to create some other cool stuff. And again, I frankly like Starfield. Now, if I had a choice between them working on The Elder Scrolls 6 or Starfield, I would have definitely preferred to have seen The Elder Scrolls 6. But frankly, if I'm being completely honest, I wish that Fallout 76 and The Elder Scrolls Online were just never made, and instead we had made Starfield, and then by now we would have had The Elder Scrolls 6. So then comes 2023, and this is where things start getting really, really interesting. Microsoft gets involved in a court case, and one of the orders that came from this is the release of some internal documents, and some of them contain information about The Elder Scrolls 6. And at this point, Phil Spencer, who is the CEO of Microsoft Gaming, confirms to us that The Elder Scrolls 6 is at least a year away. Then Pete Hines also confirms the same sentiment, that the game is further away from completion than people probably hope. He goes ahead and explains that The Elder Scrolls 6 is still, at this point in 2023, at the very early stages of development. And just in case you didn't know, Pete is the former Senior Vice President of Global Marketing Communications at Bethesda. So then we get to 2025 and we get the Oblivion Remaster release. Then on a live stream, Todd Howard himself confirms that they are currently working on The Elder Scrolls 6 and it's been all hands on deck. They are really trying to get the game out. And he does also confirm to us that the game will not be coming out before 2026, which this is an interesting piece of information. One of the things that we also found out from those internal documents that got released is that The Elder Scrolls 6 was actually supposed to come out in 2024. So why didn't that happen? Well, it was because of COVID. The documents basically revealed that there was some sort of slowdown or freeze or pause of work for like 2 years, and that's why the game wasn't slated to come out in 2024 anymore, and the new date was actually 2026. So yes, we're going to talk more about this, but there is the possibility, although I think it's unrealistic, if we're being honest, it's not going to be that, but the earliest that we could theoretically get the game is 2026. If I had to guess, it'll be either 2027 or 2028 because, number one, delays happen. Throw in an extra year for unforeseen circumstances and it would be 2027. Or, the fact that the game has been delayed so much now that the expectation is through the roof. I would be willing to bet that there are things that they put into Starfield that they were probably going to put into The Elder Scrolls 6. And after seeing the reception, they're probably rethinking it or they're going to redesign it. So throw in another year. It's either going to be 27 or 28 minimum. But technically, the earliest that it could in fact come out is 2026. So there is the possibility. I don't think it's going to happen, but it is a possibility. So now let's go ahead and talk about the most current news and the most recent leaks that we heard of for the game. And this is where it gets really spicy and honestly kind of questionable. So there's this guy who is supposedly an internal member of Bethesda who is a very well-known leaker. His name is EXTAS1S or however you pronounce it, and he revealed or leaked a lot of very interesting information from the next game. A lot of people are not so happy. Now, before we get into that, How trustworthy is this person? Well, theoretically, they are trustworthy. Theoretically, they have a good track record because of other leaks that they've also put out in the past. But a lot of people are also calling BS, so how true this is or not, I don't know. Take it with a grain of salt, but this is the most recent of the leaks that we're hearing. So according to them, and the most recent leaks that we have coming from this, is that supposedly the game is going to be taking place between Hammerfell and High Rock. So you're going to be going from both locations. You're going to be going from desert to the mountains. So it's going to feature both of those environments, and to me that sounds pretty cool. Supposedly the game is also going to have between 12 and 13 major cities, which is very ambitious. Another part of these leaks, which I'm not really excited about, are saying that the game is going to have base building or settlement or fortress construction and building. I really hope that this is not the case. I didn't like it in Fallout. I don't like it in Starfield. I don't like it anywhere. I don't think they know how to do this, but they insist in doing this over and over, so I'm inclined to believe that it's true. The other very spicy bit of information that we also got from these leaks is that supposedly the game will feature naval combat and shipbuilding mechanics that are inspired by Starfield. One of the things that I really like about some mods in Skyrim is the introduction of exactly that, being able to use the boats that you see. I think that that's cool, and the shipbuilding mechanic in Starfield is like the best I've ever seen. It's top notch, so if anybody could do it, it's them. I don't know, man. If it's done well, why not? It could be good. What I don't like is the idea of base building. I hate that. The other bit of information also involving this leak is that supposedly there will be underwater exploration also. There will be an element of that, of underwater marine exploration. That's what they said. That right there, I'm not at all excited for. I don't like the idea of that. I can't think of a game that's ever done that and it was fun, other than like Mario 64. The underwater thing with the boat and that giant red eel or whatever that was badass. I like that a lot. I don't think they're going to execute it well though. I don't think it should be in the game, but we already kind of had a little bit of that in Skyrim. Maybe that's what they're talking about. Maybe it's just parts of certain missions like the one for the Thieves Guild. What is it? The Golden Glow Estate? I forget the name, but one of the first missions you do for the Thieves Guild, if I recall correctly, you can go underwater and find an entrance that way, right? So maybe that's what they're talking about. Not so much this robust underwater exploration, which sounds stupid as hell. Other bits of information that also came from these leaks is that we're going to be seeing the reintroduction of dragons in the game yet again. I have some pretty strong feelings about that, but before I say it, let me just finish and say the last thing is that supposedly the leveling progression is going to be less rigid, whatever that means. It implies that there's some supposed improvement to the class system. It's going to be less rigid and they're going to change it up. Now, why am I not super hyped about dragons? Well, I don't want to be the Dragonborn again. I really hope that that's not a thing. I don't want to be the chosen one in this game. I don't mind the dragons themselves. If they want to add that to the game again, fine. The dragons are cool. I just really don't want to be the Dragonborn again. I really hope we're not the chosen one. The fun thing about the game is to build your own story. I don't like having this preset path or this preset story that you gotta follow and you've been the chosen one since the start of the game. I hope that that's not the case. If you want to do that and that can be like a path that you choose, that's fine. I like the option, and I hope that Bethesda learned from that what makes their game cool and replayable is being able to always choose your path, is being able to roleplay and reinvent your character and being able to be a different thing in every playthrough. With all of that said, my friends, this is the gist of everything we know about The Elder Scrolls 6 so far. If you did in fact enjoy this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up because it really helps me a lot. And if you want to see more content like this in the future, please don't forget to also subscribe and hit the bell notifications. If you stuck with me till the very end, I thank you very much for your time and I hope you have a great weekend. Take care.